Matt Riddle has been written off television courtesy of Solo Sikoa, and said he'd suffered a trachea damage and would be out for 6 weeks. But it's just come out now that the real reason he's gone is because he failed the wellness policy from before SummerSlam. We don't know why he failed the wellness policy, but this is his second time. He's been told he has to go to rehab or be released, so he's obviously chosen rehab. But all of that together, what do you think of it?
Okay, when he goes to rehab, he has to stay there.
I imagine so, yeah. Yeah, it's like a hotel that you're not that welcome to leave.
Well, I don't know. It's sad, but this could actually be pain pills. It could be a lot of things that he is not prescribed to be taking. I don't know what it was, and you just mentioned you don't know what it was that he failed the wellness policy, but this is the second time he's failed it.
Yes. So in the old days, it used to be 30 days for a first suspension, 60 days for a second suspension or rehab, and the third time you're out. And it might still be a third time and you're out. But that also always depends on how big of a superstar fails.
Well, it also, in the old system, when I was there the first time, it wasn't really a system. It was just like, we're going to pretend that we're kind of drug testing, and we're going to, those figures can say anything. It's whatever he wants to put down on it. And it's whatever Vince told him to put down. And it's, of course, he would fail a couple of guys, like underneath preliminary guys, just to make it look like, it's a straight up system, which it wasn't. I mean, all those top guys were all doing something. They have to do something. And people say, well, what were those guys taking drugs? Listen, they're flying every day somewhere, and they're going, and that flying sounds exotic and exciting till you do it. You take a 4-hour flight from New York or Atlanta to Denver or whatever. Then you get off. First thing you do, you go get you a car. Then you go find a room, try to get a couple hours sleep. But some guys would go and get the room, then go to the gym, then come back to the room, maybe try to rest an hour, then to the building. And then they'd be there all night. Then they would leave, either go back to the hotel or to the next town, wherever they got to go. And some of those days were like 16-hour days. So for them to handle it, their body to handle it, they would have to take something to get them rest. But of course, some things were banned. You couldn't take this, you couldn't take that. And if you got hurt on the road, well, back in those days, unless you worked, you didn't get paid. They didn't have those contracts like they got now. If they don't book you, you still get paid, which is a great deal, by the way. So it was in their best interest financially to not get hurt. And if they do get hurt, they got to work through the pain. And that is one way a lot of guys learned to work, because they're working favoring a leg. They're work favoring a shoulder or a neck. So they got to work around it, which made them search and seek other ways to do the same stuff without taking a lot of unnecessary bumps. And that's how you really learn to work. See, back when I started, we was working sometimes 7 days a week and a double header on Sunday, plus a TV in the week. So that was 10 times a week that you would actually wrestle. If you told a guy to work 10 times a week, now they'd look at you and say, ain't no way I'm doing that. And they don't, because they don't book it that way anymore. The guys, they have to have some time to rest and to let their body recover from all the aches and pains of just traveling around. I mean, traveling around with that type of schedule, whether you're wrestling or not, is very tiring. So, and I hated when they called, you got to get drug tested today in rooms, whatever building you're in.
Did you get drug? This might be a weird question, but did you get drug tested during the Zeb Colter run, or did you have a different type of like non-performers contract where they didn't bother?
No, I think I did get tested.
Really?
I think I did. Not much. I mean, what am I going to be taking?
Steroids.
Geritol or something. I don't know, but I'm trying to think of the guy, Bam Bam Bigelow.
Mm.
So this was the days that the grass, you couldn't smoke weed. And somebody in the office would leak the date of the next drug test. So Madison Square Garden was on a Sunday, but on a Saturday night, they ran a town, say 100 miles from New York City, and they drug tested there. So Bam Bam, he'd been off the weed for a while, expecting the drug test to come. And there it was. And he expected it in Madison Square Garden, but it wasn't. It was in this little spot show, they call spot shows, before the big show at the Garden. So he went in there and he was happy as hell because he was clean. But on the way back, he said, shit, they've already drug tested. He hit him a doobie or two doobies on the way home. And then he went down to the Garden the next day. He did a doobie on the way down there. Yeah. And he got in there, and the first thing he saw was drug test today. Of course, he failed it. They outsmarted him. But what it did was he couldn't work for a month, which meant that his opponent would get the consequences of that because he had an angle with Bam Bam. So Bam Bam, he told him this. He said, listen, I know why I'm not getting paid. He said, why don't we do this? And I forgot who he was working with. Why don't you let me go ahead and just continue this angle with so-and-so, because no need for him to suffer because I got busted. And he agreed to work for nothing as long as his opponent could work too and get paid. It was actually pretty good on Bam Bam's part, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I don't know how long he was out. I think it was 30 days. I think the order of the court, Vince's court, they may have cut it down to 3 weeks. But I thought that was pretty good on Bam Bam's part, that he would work for nothing so the other guy could get paid.
One more thing about these tests is I've actually heard from UFC as well. It's famously Brock Lesnar and Mark Hunt. Why Mark Hunt sued UFC is because picking and choosing when they bother suspending somebody. And this is 4 months between the actual wellness policy violation and then Riddle being written off TV. Mm-hmm. So what do you think of WWE sort of suspending people on their terms so it doesn't affect storylines? Is there a moral issue there?
Well, 4 months ago, that was when the deal with Vince was breaking.
Yeah.
I think they were tied up with that more than they were tied up with drug testing. And I think that took up maybe most of their administrative time. And I think when they got back around to it, they said, oh yeah, we didn't touch this back when it happened. So we have to do it now. And they didn't have to do it. I mean, I don't know what oversight they have over the results of drug testing. I don't even know who looks at that. I guess medical, I don't know.
I think they bring in a third party, a team of doctors and medical personnel to deal with all this.
Well, maybe. But I think that was the delay part of it. That they had so much on their plate then, they had to deal with the most pressing issue, which was Vince was leaving, and they would get to Riddle a little bit later.
It's nice that they've given Riddle 6 weeks off over Christmas as well, so that's something for him, I suppose.
Yeah, but he's going into rehab.
Yeah,
when's he going into rehab? When's he going into rehab?
It must be straight away, I suppose. I don't know. But maybe it'd be a day release thing. Maybe he's holed up somewhere for 6 weeks. Who knows?
Yeah, but if he's holed up somewhere, he's away from his family at Christmas. I mean, they can come see him, I guess. I don't know.
It could even be like a WWE approved rehab 500 miles away from where he lives. Who knows, I suppose.
Well, they could send him to Florida. You know, I was just thinking the other day, anybody who has worked for WWE can at any time declare themselves their wants are they want to go to a drug clinic, and WWE will pick it up, no questions asked, I guess. So if I was in Canada, you mentioned Canada, and I called it school again. If I was in Canada, I'd have a drug relapse like every January, and I'd go to Florida for 6 weeks, you know, between January and the middle of February, and get myself whole again. And I would have a whole year to see if I could stay off that notorious weed or the notorious opioids or whatever that was plaguing me.
You should have, because you're in Florida, like a Tampa-based rehab facility for cold wrestlers.
In my house.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, well, maybe next door or something. And you have like a cold wrestlers rehab for every January and get it on WWE's dime.
Yeah, that's what I should do. And I would just go over there and check on them like every other day or something. Like if Riddle was there, I said, "Where's Riddle?" They said, "Oh, he left last night and said he'd be back sometime.
He's at the dispensary."
He's down to some drugstore trying to sign a bunch of blank scripts. So, but a lot of I've heard of several guys going into rehab, and WWE picks it up. Rehab is very, very expensive. You know, a week in rehab, you know what it cost?
Tell me.
$10,000. $10,000 to lay around the infirmary, I guess. I guess they got beds, you live there. But it's like $10,000. And of course, the WWE is going to pay for it. They just pay for it. I don't think their insurance pays for it anything. I think they pay for it. So people who have a medical background said, "Hey, I tell you what, I'm going to start. I'm going to start me a rehab center." And there were scams going on. One guy would go around, and these aren't wrestlers, these are just people. And he would recruit addicts to go to the halfway house or the rehab center. And he could only do it once a year, and he had a list. They've smartened up to it now. And he did this for like 4 or 5 years before they caught on to it. And he would tell them, he would give them, say, $2,000 when they signed to go in, knowing he was going to make like $30,000 on it. And, you know, a broke addict on the street don't have any money. You can give me, what, $2,000? Hell yeah, I'll sign it. Let's go. They put them in there and they feed them. And, of course, they don't give them the drugs, but it's according to how bad they're addicted, whether they need them or not. But it became a scam. So if I disappear, all of a sudden you say, "Where's Dutch?" "Well, I think he's in that Sunshine Center rehab down in Orlando." So I think he's there, so you can find him there. So now you know where I might end up.